of HTML. That's my other one. We did 2 weeks of HTML, and in those 2 weeks, you've seen quite a bit about structuring pages. I am clicking the wrong links here. You saw quite a bit about structuring pages, but not everything that you need to make a page look good appeared on there. So making pages look good is the purpose of the next technology along, which is CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. I'm trying to bring up the chat. There. Style sheet, simply because it's a file that contains all the style information to make your to display your page as you like. And you'll see as we progress why people call it cascading. But to take an example from out of W3 schools, the style of your page, here I'll follow tutorials and then CSS. Let's jump to an example, or just this. The style of your page is defined with those sorts of things there. You can see the difference between your HTML, and it's obvious that you've got two different techniques being used side by side. Your HTML, it's got the less than and the more than sign, looking like chevrons, to mark the beginning and the end of certain sections of your page. The style, it's to indicate things like, okay, the body will be like this, and it uses completely different brackets, and it uses keywords like those that appear here. If I press try it, we'll be able to see what we've got here, and we can actually play with what we have got here. And style sheets are used in combination with HTML. For example, like what we've got here. We've got an HTML document starting here and ending there. But in that HTML document, there are two quite different things, because there's the body with its text there. And at the same time as the body, we have got the head. The head of the page never contains anything that appears in the display. It only ever contains stuff that is useful for search engines, or that is useful to organize the page, or information about its date, search keywords, all of those really exciting things that no one ever sees. And between other things, the head of the page here, it contains the style in a special tag, open, shut style, and written in a completely different way. So now we have two technologies, style sheets and HTML, and they are used in combination. Right, it's time I should start saying a couple of things about a bunch of technologies we're encountering and why there are so many and this weird thing that we get seeing so many of them. Part of the problem is historical. Tim Berners-Lee created the HTML language in the mid-90s, no, even before that, late 80s. And when he did, no one was concerned about the exact font used on the web page or the size of a margin. And as things developed historically, it then became really important to have the exact margin 2 pixels and not 3 pixels and this sort of thing. And it also became really important to get the right color and the detail of all of those things. But at the same time, by the time that that became really important, everyone was using the HTML language, and we couldn't change the HTML language from what it had originally been defined. So we needed something else, and that something else became the style sheets. There is another couple of reasons, less historical, less due to the vagaries of individual choices, and more due to more fundamental reasons. You'll see them. But that's one of the big factors in having the strange mix of technologies that there is online, is really the historical stuff. Someone invents something and it works really nicely. And then when everybody uses it, then we then realize that it's not enough. And because it's not enough, someone then creates a different technology that kind of sits on top and adds the functionality that we need, but that has to do it in a different way so that it doesn't disturb what already exists. There's a classic story among computer engineers, not just computer engineers, engineering generally, about a Roman road. I don't know whether you heard this one. The notion that your technology today has to work alongside older ideas is called backward compatibility. Something that we create now has to be compatible with all the things. So back to the Roman road. At one time, those Romans, as you know, built fantastic stone roads, and they did so that their carriages could go on it, and their carriages were sized so that they could get a horse cart to go quick enough. So they sized those kinds of things so you could get 2 horses side by side. Okay, fair enough. That pretty much fixed the size of the chariot, and so that fixed the size of the grooves those chariots made on the road. I promise I'm sounding like I'm going way, way off track, but we're getting somewhere surprising but useful. Once those tracks existed on the road, if you had the funny idea of creating anything any different and of sizing your carriage any different, you were going to break the wheels, because the road had those grooves in it and had the shape in it that meant that it was easy to put it in something that size and hard to put it in anything else. So when eventually in Victorian times people started to build railroads and trains and that kind of things, they sized things exactly the same, because that was the size that didn't break when you put it on the road, and that was the same size that everything had been built before. We had to keep things that were backward compatible with the technology that had been there just before that. Our cars are built to the same kind of sizes, and so on and so forth. And so if you look at the size of the space between the wheels, the wheels of your car now, they are dimensioned to the backside of 2 horses. There is no technical reason to do it, but the the succession of technologies and the reason why we adopted them has created this kind of strange situation. And if you look at style sheets and you look at HTML and you type up keyword and you think, why did anyone pick that keyword? And why is color being used with this when at the same time I'm doing things to do with the size of a margin? The size of a margin is done with this completely different thing. And it's this mix of historical techniques that were chosen at one time and then not thrown away or could not be thrown away, and that other things were then built on top. Okay, now back to normal mode and less about the size of horses. So we have these two side-by-side technologies, style sheet and to be able to control things like sizes and colors and margins and the style of a page. And at the same time, our HTML that structures the content, paragraphs, links, lists of things, images, and so on. Certain key things that you should find out about and that you should apply when you use style sheets. If I go back to this thing called CSS tutorials here, I would say one really, really important thing in there is what is called a box model. The box model is a little bit irritating, but all you need is one image, really. One image which there is a version of it here. When you have a paragraph in HTML, your paragraph is in that content. And then around the paragraph, you can actually define some padding, a border, and some margin. And you have those keywords in CSS. If you enlarge the padding, you enlarge the space around the box that your paragraph can be in. If you enlarge the border, you decide to have a thick box or a thin box around your paragraph. And if you enlarge the margin, you enlarge the space outside the paragraph and the box. That probably sounds a little bit confusing. Here is a div that has a certain width measured in pixels, a border, some padding and some margin. The padding is the bit my mouse is at the moment in bluish, in light gray. How about I read this light gray? The border is the green box, is the size of the green box. The margin is the size outside the box, around the paragraph. Well, we can change that here. Let's see if this becomes thinner, what happens. There's a thinner box. We can change this margin from 20 to 10 pixels. Now there is a thinner margin, so it is a little bit higher and a little bit more to the side. What have I not done? Yeah, I made everything thinner, so let's try to make this thicker. There. Can we ever remember these sorts of things? No, absolutely not. I do not remember this. and I will not ask you to remember this, use a source of information, like for example, uh, like for example, W3 schools, and um, get your navigate to these sorts of things when you need to, or use certain key examples, key reference material that you can go back to be able to read to be able to read those things. So that's one of the useful ones to practice a little and know little about, to be able to change to be able to control these things. Another really useful thing to practice to get to know with sheets. Sorry. Knowing knowing a little your what we call the selectors. This is a selector. This basically says that all the paragraphs will have this alignment and this color. Basically, everywhere there is a P tag. Yeah, okay. But there are other selectors. So if you wanted only one of the sections of your whole HTML, only one tag to be to have a certain style, you would give that tag an ID. For example, you might have a paragraph one, you would put in your paragraph one this ID for your paragraph. And then hash power one means that whatever has that ID will be arranged like this. And there are several more selectors. And basically the purpose of the selectors is to be able to filter what in your web page has got a style that you define. So here, paragraph one has got this style. And up here, all paragraphs have got this style because I have selected all paragraphs. So that's another important one. There's a few other interesting ones. But I want to avoid taking you through a long list of all of the different options and so on, because, well, actually for a mix of two reasons. The first one is it will get too long, and the second one is depending on your purpose, on the reasons why, on your choice of web page and presentation to develop, you might actually need different things out of this whole set of techniques. So some people would find, out of the different things that are in there, some people might find that colors are extremely important to what they are doing, but other people would be concerned about margins, and other people might be concerned about, say, centering things on the page and so on. So I would, as you practice, and then later when you pick an example to develop and show in for your work, I would encourage you to do something like this. You take you take the case you want to look into as an opportunity to develop some aspects of these things, but you don't develop them all. You don't need to know absolutely everything about both fonts. I'm picking random ones from the list that is there, to both fonts and the use of borders and the use of changes of color. You need to consider a case, and that case look at what is most useful to get right for that case, and look at the style sheet for that. I said I would explain to you what cascading means in cascading style sheet. To do that, I'll turn on Notepad++, and we'll play with functions PHP index HTML. This index HTML, yes, index HTML is the page that I wanted to show you. Is the page that we had used in the as we were practicing HTML. And there are several ways, several places where we can actually use style sheets. One is to do the same as what you saw just before with W3 Schools. So let's go to here and follow up with the same try it editor thing that is there, and I'll copy a style. Maybe not this one. We'll play with some more with this one a little bit later, and copy this style there. So body, background color light blue, and all of that kind of thing. Actually, I need the style and slash style tag as well. There. So one way to work with the styles is to actually have that style slash style tag in the head. Here, I'll tab this forward. And even inside the tag, tab this forward. If I do this, then I have a style sheet that applies to all of this page. So now all of the page is set up so that headings H1 are in white and centered, while the body is light blue, and the paragraphs are in this format. Do I have an H1? I've got a feeling, yes, I do have an H1. So now we can open this page. Will I find it quickly if I type index.html innovative multimedia? There it is. And it should load up, and it's in light blue with the title being white, and in the middle it is centered, and the paragraphs in 20 pixels, and everything that had been set by the by the example we lifted off W3 Schools. And I can change everything in one go, so I can change all of my paragraphs in one go by replacing that with 14 pixels if I feel like it, and so on. So far, so good. But what if I wanted my let's make this into a paragraph from here to there. What if I wanted my paragraphs to all follow the general thing that I've put at the top of the page, except for one? So save, view, right, paragraph, both in the same format, except for the bold and the italics that come after. The bold and the italics that are used here. And let's say all of the paragraphs in my site are like this, except that I want one of them to be a different color or something like this. I'll take this paragraph and I'm going to experiment with it. I put style equal quote unquote. I'm trying to make sure that you can see clearly by putting some more spaces. And now inside the quote unquote, I can write down a sub style that applies just inside this part. Color red. Just because, well, just because. Oh, what have I done? Sorry, I was in my desire to make it clearer. I put in spaces that cause the machine to not understand the tag anymore. There. Now the style can be done in two different ways and in two different places. I can do the style at the top here in that section of the head between the style and /style tags. And if I do, then it's a style that applies to the whole page. But if I don't want to apply to it to apply to the whole page, and I want it to apply to just one bit, like this, then I can actually put in a style property, a style attribute of this tag, and then this attribute will give you a style in this section of the page. And maybe you see why we say cascading style sheet. You have a cascade of options. You could apply the style to the whole page, or you could apply the style to a tag that is inside, or you could apply it to a tag that is even further inside. So I could actually apply the style at the div level, or inside the div level, I could apply it at the paragraph level. And the machine will actually pick the nearest style first. So if there is some contradiction between the styles, so here I've said color red, yeah, but here I've got a P as well. Let's say that I say this one is color gray. I'm just trying to remember if we spell this in American English or in British English, but I think it's American English. Yes. Let's pretend that you haven't seen the result. And here I have a style sheet that says paragraph should be in gray color, and here the style says that paragraphs should be in red. Yeah, now it can't be gray and red at the same time. So which one does the machine take? I've got an idea, because I asked this question, but you can't magically know. So if I do this, right, let's put them side by side. Okay, now instead of asking you this as if somehow you were able to, I don't know, put your finger in the wind and see which way it was blowing, let's have a look at this HTML and at this result. Okay, given the choice between gray, like it says here, and red, like it says here, why is it that this one's red and that this one's gray? Someone wants to volunteer an idea?
Hello.
Yeah, got an idea?
Yeah, is it because the red is in the div for the HTML code, but then the grey is in the head of the rest of, or like the overall code, but then the red is specifying just that section?
Yeah, so the red is specified for just that section, like you say. It's in that paragraph there. The paragraph that says, this is a paragraph. There. And so the red will apply to only this part and not the bottom one. So this part and not this part. The one that is for the whole, while the other one is specified in the head of the page, and so it applies to the whole page. Now, if there is a contradiction, which one has the machine picked? Between the thing that was for the whole page or the thing that was in the for the sub part of the page?
Yeah, so it's picked the part for the sub part of the page.
Yeah. So it will always, the system will pick the one that corresponds to the nearest, to the most specific each time. So if you've got something that is specified for just a paragraph, it will do it for this paragraph. And if the paragraph is in a div and you do something in a div, and the div is in another div and you do something at this level and so on, each time it will do in priority the bit that is closest to the text you're changing. And we could do it in successive things. I can actually put a style in there. Let's try. Here I'll use font size. And do something much bigger than the other one so that we can actually see the difference clearly enough. So now, anything that is inside this div, the font size, the big font size will apply. And then among these, anything that is in there, the color red will apply as well. Outside of this paragraph, it's not red. Outside of this div, it's not 20 pixels. It's the other one. Is that making sense? Can you see why people call that cascading? So in the structure of HTML, we can actually specify a whole cascade of styles. A style for the whole page, but then inside the page, a style for just the header bit, a style for just the footer bit, a style for the navigation, a style for the content, a style for certain paragraphs in the content. We can do one better. So to give you an example of that, let me go to W3 Schools again. I think that is explained in that syntax section. No, I thought it was explained in the syntax section. As this thing loads slowly, I'll tell you what I'm looking for. We can do one better, which is to actually have the style part of our page not inside the web page, but in another file loaded when we load the web page. You might not see why it makes a very big difference. Oh no, I'm not finding the right place. Okay. I'll search for it. I'll search for it from a different source. How to load a style sheet HTML. And you see here, that people talk about something called an external style sheet. And you see also that W3 Schools is back here. But here, since W3 Schools wasn't helping us very much, I'm going to use this one. You see this here in the head. There isn't a style/style tag. Instead, that's advertising coming up. Or am I going to be able to see this? Instead, what I have is a tag that says link, and then relation is a style sheet. The type of link is a CSS file, and href, so the reference to the file is to something called mygstyle.css. So I can do something like this. Let's enlarge this again so that we can actually see what there is there. I can place this here in a separate file. And if I put it in a separate file, I can actually have each page from my website related to that file every time. You can see the advantage of doing that. Suppose that I've got 20 pages in my website. Well, no, let's talk about a website of a biggish kind of place. Let's say I have 200 pages on my website. Or if you take Sheffield Hallam University as an example, they've probably got a couple of thousand pages on the website or something worse. And I want every page on my website to be presented in the same way. Maybe I have an image that I actually want to respect, and I've paid someone quite a lot of money in marketing to come up with something that works well for what I'm trying to sell or the image I'm trying to project, and I want every page on my website to actually look according to my corporate image. And I don't want to go back through every page on my website and one page at a time make a change to a font size or to some, or to some font family or a color or whatever else it is when I change. I want one file, and this one file will contain the style, and every page on my website will go to this one file for the style. In that case, cut this out, create a new file, paste that. In that new file, we're going to save it. No, not edit. Sorry. We're going to save it and call it something that ends in .css. Probably style.css. Innovative Multimedia HTML5, perfect. That's a great place. New one, no style dot css. Not a text file. Oh, I'll just pick any out of this. It's gonna just pick any. I could take something. Is experience that sheet in there? Yes. Right, style.css. There. Now I've put this in a separate thing, and you see that now that I've called it style.css, my Notepad++ is also nicely able to actually. No, I didn't mean to do this. Sorry. I meant to do this. It's also nicely put it so that I can it's actually recognizing automatically where the brackets are and so on. I can do the collapsing, and so if I have a very long style sheet file, as some companies are likely to have, then I can actually shorten certain parts of it when I'm reading through this to work out the detail. It's also got some color and syntax highlighting, it is called, things that help me spot that the syntax is right. Let's return to this now, because I want to link this index page to this style sheet. And that's not done through a style tag, it's done through something that said link and then rel and then href. But if you do not remember it too well, the website cares so much about my privacy that it actually wants me to agree to some cookies before I'm allowed to actually pick things. Give me a second. Okay, now I'll have to manually copy it. It was link. I'll keep style / style because we can use it later. It was link rel equal style sheet href equal, right, that's the name of the file, style dot css. I will read it once more that I haven't forgotten anything. Oh, there's type equals text cs text / css. Type equal text / css. Now, let's recap. The style, I've moved the style out of this web page and in a separate file which is here. And let's put them side by side so we can actually quickly jump from one to the other. So out of this web page and into this style which is here. And to make sure that my index page knows which style to use, I've put in this tag that says that there's a link for the style sheet to a CSS file, which is there, which is where, by the way, the file is called style.css. It should be in the same folder as index. Let me just quickly check the state of the folder. The folder should have in it the index page and CSS file inside the same space. Will this display? We can also check by simply loading the page. Let's see. If I refresh this, I should still see my style with the white, blue, and all that sort of thing. Right, I do. And so the style is still being applied. And if we have any doubt, let's see, let's go to the style file and I replace this with light gray. And light gray. So it's so the style file is now doing the job. But because the style is in a separate file, I can actually have a single file that contains the style for all of my website. And if my website is quite large, then I don't need to actually change the information about how the style, how the site is presented in more than one place. I can centralize all of the information about how to present my paragraphs and which fonts I want and all that kind of things in one place. I can even put a single person in charge. And that single person has the job of making sure that the way that the site is presented corresponds to the marketing image we've decided for the company. I wonder if I could do this, because here I have a, no, here I don't, but in the, already open, I don't. in the web in the site, so innovative multimedia. We have this called HTML5, and there's products and there's register, and so we can actually go here and we can have this page use the same style as the other one by making the same link. Take the link from the index page, place it in the products page. And now both pages have the same style. This page doesn't say very much. H1 products / H1. And here I'll write coming soon. And to have a link, instead of Shuacock here, products.html. Now, because both pages have the same style, we should actually see them both written in the same way. Refresh this because the links were incorrect. That should take me to products, and it says it's coming soon. Step back. And the style is the same for both. The centering, the background color, all of those sorts of detail. The style is the same, but you might feel it's slightly inconsistent. Like, for example, the paragraph here hasn't got the same color and font and size as well, this is different, but as this link text, for example. And in fact, if I click, it's again different. This is smaller and so on. So we'll play at bringing in this consistency, but also at seeing if I change this style, the style should change in both pages. To bring that consistency, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this that applies to paragraph texts, and instead I'll say it applies to div text. If I apply it to div text, then it will apply to any text that is inside of the div section, which is, let us check, in the index, which is true of this, because this is in a link, which is in a div, and this is a paragraph, which is in a div. And below, this one isn't in a div. We'll see what happens to it. And the products, the coming soon, is in a div. Right, we're almost there, but this paragraph there isn't in a div part of the text. The hello world is now, because it's inside a div that said headings, is now in the same font as this. And if I click, coming soon is in the same color, in the same size, and the kind of things as the rest. But that paragraph that is out of my div isn't presented like the rest. And you can see that we can actually tinker with our HTML page and with our CSS page to bring in that level of consistency that people often look for from their websites. I'm going to copy this and the index here. Remember that style there? I'll paste that in here, and let's say it applies to P. So P would mean it applies to, between other things, would mean it applies to this. Again, recap. We have seen three different places where we could actually put our style sheet. We could put it in an external file so that we can actually load it throughout the site and apply the style sheet to the whole website. We could put it in the header of the page so that we can apply it not to the whole site, but apply it to the whole page. And finally, we could put it inside specific tags so that we can apply the style sheet to that tag and tags below it. What I had started to say about cascading continues to apply. So your cascade starts at the very top. So things apply first to the whole site, but then things that are more local, maybe to just a page, take priority over the whole site if there is something in the page. And then things within a tag take priority over things that apply to the whole page. And the more local it is, the higher the priority if there is any contradiction. Let's put that aside to see it. And if I load it, I think with my copy of a change to the paragraph, we're going to see that, yeah, this has come the same as the same as the rest. With all of that, with all that successive possibilities of having a style sheet that is in an outside file versus a style sheet in a local page versus a style sheet in a paragraph and this sort of thing. It's, especially if your style sheets become quite long, it's easy to lose track of which part of the style is applying at any one time. So in this one, say, okay, so I can see that this is red because there's a style sheet that applies in a paragraph, and not gray because the style sheet that says gray is at a bigger level. But if your style sheets were 200 lines long or 2000 lines long, you probably wouldn't be able to do the same, or not quickly. Enter, or I should say re-enter, because I used it once before, the object inspector. Right, I go here. In my web page, and I'm asking the system to show me details of how the web page is being worked out by using these tools called Web Developer. Now, if you're using Chrome or other web browsers than mine, so I'm using Firefox. If you're using a different web browser, then your option is in a slightly different corner. But there are options to be able to get developer details, to get a developer's view, an engineer's view of how the web page is working. And I'll ask the machine to show me toggle tools. Toggle tools would actually show me all the tools in one go, and then I can tab through the tools available. But what I want is this thing called the inspector. What it's doing, remember, is that I can actually select certain parts of the page. And when I do, the machine shows me the corresponding parts of the HTML. So here I can see the image, but I'm curious about this paragraph and its color. So here I can see the paragraph. Where is that paragraph? Oh, I can't see it in there, but if I look for it, container nav div, there it is. Yeah, there's the paragraph in question. So when I move my mouse to here, at the same time, it's showing me the corresponding thing. And I wonder, what style applies to it. This time, the style isn't too difficult to see, but here, where can I put this thing so I can see what is happening? Right, here I'm told the body, the background color for the body is like gray or things like that. But here, if I click on this, the machine is telling me all sorts of interesting things. In this element, the color is red. At the level above, in the paragraph, the color would have been gray. Only that is struck out because it's superseded by the red. Family of code and so on, etc. Then at the level before that, in the div, there's all sorts of things, the color being gray, the font family, but that is superseded by what is done at the paragraph level, which is superseded by what is done at the element level. So if you have a cascading style sheet where you start to lose sight of the cascade, and you start to wonder, well, why is this size, this color, why is this margin being applied? Use a tool like this to be able to work out that kind of detail. It will tell you the sizes of everything, the margins of everything, and so on. And it will tell you which part of your style sheet is bringing this result. How patient do we have to be with these sorts of things? Ask any professional how long it takes them to sometimes track one pixel that is, or one, not pixel, but say one pixel's width line that is placed in the wrong place. Suppose that you've got, say, two images side by side there, and between the two images, there is a margin that refuses to go away, and the margin is the wrong color. And then you have an obvious line appearing there. People who develop web pages and work to project on a web page a corporate image spend all of their time getting that right. If you work in a place, or if you speak to people who work in a place like Apple, for example, they would tell you that they have to get obsessive about this level of detail. Oh, guys, I just saw a message from Family, and I the seeing his message, I just realized how far I was overrunning. I'm really sorry. I should have paid that. I should have paid attention to what time it was and how long I'm keeping you. You've seen the essential of this of this stuff. Ways to debug, how the files work together, the reasons why these things are why these things are working. Any questions that you want to ask before I before I go, and if you've had enough, you're welcome to